So Nicholas Bornels of Capital Inc., I would like to welcome you to this very interesting session on U.S. shipbuilding. U.S. shipbuilding is one of the main activities of the overall maritime cluster of the overall maritime sector in the U.S., and we are privileged to have with us great sector participants at top level who will share their insight. And I'd like to thank Marcia, Patrick, and James, and of course, our moderator, Tony Salgado, partner of Blount, who is going to moderate the discussion and introduce our panelists. Thank you to all, and we look forward to a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicholas, for that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. We've, as Nicholas said, we've assembled a great panel for you on U.S. shipbuilding. It's very representative of the types of shipyards we have in the United States. The panelists are Marcia Blount of Blount Boats. Marcia's been the president and chief financial officer of Blount Boats since 2007. Patrick Kelly of Fraser Industries, who's been the chief executive officer of Fraser Industries since last year. Fraser Industries is the parent company of Fraser Shipyards, Lake Assault Boats, and Northern Engineering. And Jim Miller of Philly Shipyard, who was appointed as senior advisor to Philly Shipyard in April of 2020. Jim was previously the chief executive officer of Philly Shipyard from 2008 to 2011, and the chairman of the board of Philly Shipyard from 2011 to 2014, and then again from 2016 to 2020. Before I turn to the panel, I want to give just a few words about Blount's maritime practice. It's a full-service law firm with a large and comprehensive maritime practice. We're probably the largest in the United States. We provide advice regarding transactional, litigation, regulatory, and legislative matters. I myself typically represent clients, including shipyards, in ship finance, construction, chartering, and other transactional matters, and Jones Act citizenship issues. I particularly focus on developing Jones Act compliant structures for the construction and operation of Jones Act vessels in all trade lanes. So with that, Marcia, if you'll kick us off.
Okay, could I have my aerial photo?
I should add that what we're going to do, the panelists are going to go through and give some background on their shipyards.
That's not my aerial photo. There we go. Okay, Blount Boats is a full-service shipyard specializing in the construction of steel and aluminum vessels up to 200 feet. The shipyard is located on 6 acres in Warren, Rhode Island, on Narragansett Bay. We are between the town beach and the town wastewater treatment plant. If you could go to the next slide, we have our recent deliveries. So it's not quite in order, but yes, let's go to Breaker 2. Okay, Breaker 2 is a 56-foot twin screw icebreaking tug built for the New York Power Authority. The breaker pulls an ice boom across the upper Niagara River, preventing ice flows from clogging the intakes to the hydroelectric power plant. Okay, next slide. This is the boat we just pulled out of the hull shop yesterday. Her name is a secret, so we rubbed it off. It will be announced by the governor of Maryland. It is for the state of Maryland. It's a 94-foot icebreaker buoy tender, and it's replacing a vessel built in 1942. Okay, next slide. Okay, this is the Atlantic Endeavor. This is our second crew transfer vessel. We delivered in 2021. She's 65 feet. She's right whale compliant. She's a chart wheel design. Our first vessel, our first CTV, was the Atlantic Pioneer, and she was the first U.S. flagged crew transfer vessel built in the United States. Okay, the next slide. Okay, most recently we have signed contracts with American Offshore Services for 4 30-meter crew transfer vessels for delivery in 2023 and 2024.
Okay, over to you, Patrick.
Very good, thank you. If I could have my slides up as well, please, I'd appreciate it. And thank you, Capital Link, for the opportunity to join the panel. And thank you all for your time today, and greetings from the western shores of Lake Superior in Superior, Wisconsin. As Tony mentioned, Fraser Industries is made up of 3 subsidiary groups. Fraser Shipyards is a new build and repair, full service steel repair shop. We do overhaul and new build construction as well. Lake Assault Boats is a new aluminum workboat for leisure, commercial, municipal, state, and federal customers. And last but certainly not least, our Northern Engineering team is directly involved in machining, renewal, and repair work, a full service machine shop supporting the marine industry. Today, we are 350 employees during our overwinter work, but have a full-time regimen of 250 full-time employees. It expands to 350 during the busy season for us, which is the overwinter period that we're in right now. If I could have the next slide, please. I'll talk a little bit about Fraser Shipyard and Lake Assault Boats, the 2 larger of our 3 groups. Fraser Shipyard is focused on steel hull repair and construction, as I mentioned. Our primary customers are industrial, ferry passenger, and government vessels. By being strategically located in the Superior Duluth Harbor Complex, which is one of the top 20 harbors in North America, we benefit from the commercial traffic that comes through the harbor on a regular basis. We have 2 dry docks pictured to the left here in the forefront of the photograph that enable full service Jones Act repairs to Great Lakers and any working boats on the Great Lakes that we can service. We also undertake new build construction for ferry and passenger vessels. Recent customers have included the U.S. Coast Guard, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and several other government entities. We are celebrating over 130 years of continuous operation at this location in Superior, Wisconsin. We have over 60 acres, about 15 acres of which are currently utilized. You can see some of the open space here in the photograph to the left. In the forefront are our 2 dry docks, on the left holding just under a 700-foot Great Laker, which is in for winter repair. And on the right dry dock, you can see a 200-foot passenger ferry that was under construction and since launched and out on the waters. This one was capable of carrying 30 vehicles and up to 200 passengers at a time. If I could have the next slide, please. Lake Assault Boats, I mentioned earlier, focused on aluminum hulled vessels. Customers include leisure, commercial, fire, police, and military. We are the proud suppliers of over 125 force protection patrol boats to the U.S. Navy currently, which are being deployed globally around the world. We're also in the process of building a 79-foot casino boat in modules, which are assembled on the customer site and for launch there. We're celebrating our track record at Lake Assault Boats by delivering our 200th aluminum vessel this year, and quite a celebration for us. And Lake Assault has locations in Superior, Wisconsin, and Portsmouth, Virginia, that create delivery and post-delivery service options for our customers. If I could have my last slide, please. Fraser Industries and the subsidiaries are well suited to meet customer needs. Some customers opt for end-to-end service, meaning looking for design work, fabrication, commissioning, post-delivery service, all of which we can provide. Other customers will bring customer supplied designs that we're happy to engage with, bring best value package of options, and get the boats built to a customer specification. We're excited about where the maritime market is going and excited about joining the panel today, and I'll hold there for now. Over to Jim.
Good afternoon. Can we put the Philly slides up, please? Thank you. Go back to the beginning. There you go. Thank you. Pleased to be here today. Philly Shipyard, we're celebrating, we're in our 25th year of business and operations. We are a full service shipyard that builds large repairs and of large ongoing commercial vessels. As you can see from the picture in the middle, all right, we have 2 dry docks. The one building dock is serviced by 2 side cranes plus a 660-ton capacity gantry crane. We currently have approximately 1,000 employees inside the gate and very, very active. Next slide, please. To best describe the yard is basically our 3-legged stool strategy, which is comprised of commercial new builds, which includes offshore wind vessels, container ships, and tankers that have been previously delivered. Government new builds, the current NMSV training ships, which I'll cover in the next slide, and other variants of that for the government industries. And last but not least is the maintenance, repair, overhaul, conversion market for MSC and for the Navy and other government entities. Next slide, please. We currently have in backlog, 4 training ships for tote services, and the ultimate owner being MARAD, part of the Department of Transportation. We're very proud of these ships because they are basically being delivered to the various maritime academies that are training the mariners for the future. NMSV-1 is currently in production, and that will be going to SUNY Maritime. And you can see the various phases. We laid the keel in December, so you can see the modules starting to be assembled in the dry dock. You see a completed module before the dry dock, and you see some various modules in various phases of production. Next slide. As I mentioned, 25 years. We're very, very proud. We're looking forward to the future, and thank you for your attention.
Okay, so the first question I have for the panel, and thank you for your presentations. I'm remiss for not saying that up front. That was very informative and helpful. So I thought, given COVID-19, I'd be remiss not to ask the question, how has it affected your shipyards? How have you dealt with it? Shipyards, as everybody knows, are labor-intensive facilities. They can't really, there aren't robots building ships. So you have unique problems trying to construct vessels during a pandemic type situation that we've experienced the past couple of years. So I thought I'd ask you, how has that affected your shipyard, and how have you dealt with it? Jim, I thought I'd start with you.
Yes, the COVID-19 and the subsequent vaccination mandate that was flowed down to us in the fall of this year has had a pretty dramatic effect, in our production. It's affected our ability to attract people to come to the yard who don't care for the idea of getting a vaccination and being mandated. So getting manpower and the proper skills and people to ramp up and do the project has been challenging. In addition, the beginning in probably late November and December, with the advent of the Omicron virus variant, we were basically experiencing many cases, and with the quarantining and everything, that has also caused a lack of earned hours in production. So it's something that we face every day. We've taken every reasonable and beyond reasonable steps with masks and distancing and staggered work breaks and all kind of things that we're doing. But I'd say the primary challenge is to be able to basically to attract and maintain a skilled workforce.
Marcia or Patrick?
Yeah, well, the governor of Rhode Island did not shut down manufacturing. So I'm not sure if the other shipyards were shut down for a period of time. There were states where they did shut down manufacturing, but Gina Raimondo did not do that. So we kept going. Everything was slowed down in that the issue of distancing, it's hard to do in a small engine room or a pilot house. And also, in terms of the technicians, the engine technicians coming or scheduling U.S. Coast Guard for inspections. They just weren't coming to the facility. So we didn't stop, but we slowed. And we did have some cases, but not that much. And we simply could not go remote, and we didn't.
Fraser, very similar to both Marcia and Jim in descriptions, it's tested every aspect of what we do. Everything from recruiting to boat building to interactions with all parts of our value chain, supply chain, have been under stress. And I don't think that's unusual for anybody else in the conference who has seen this. Certainly, though, we benefit from segregated construction facilities. We're not on top of each other except in unusual situations. So we absolutely, like Marcia, continued working in full operations throughout the pandemic. Obviously, though, challenged by personal situations. Employees had family members out. Maybe they weren't sick, but maybe others were that required special care situations. Supply chain has been under stress. Just getting outboard engines, as an example, can be quite a challenge at times and require some pretty careful procurement planning to order earlier and constantly check with suppliers about availability. So challenging on many different fronts, for sure.
Thank you. Moving on, just because of time. As everybody knows on this panel, and I think many of the participants in the forum, one of the Jones Act's main requirements is that vessels be built in the United States if they're going to participate in our coastwise trade. There are certain exceptions, but that is the general rule. Oftentimes, people challenge this requirement as being unnecessary because vessels can be built less expensively abroad. But there are a number of reasons why it's important that ships be built in the United States. And also, it's important for people to understand why it does cost more to build a ship in the United States. So I asked the panelists their views as to what's behind the cost factors in building a ship in the United States. Patrick, do you want to start?
Yep, thank you. Yeah, it requires a number of considerations when you talk about costing, right? You have to look at the quality of the vessel being built relative to the comparison base. And I would argue the boats being built in the United States are top quality boats comparable to any vessels around the world. I think that's an important consideration looking at the cost benefit trade-off. I'll say this though as well, Fraser Industries is a good example of this. So I'm really speaking about my own company. We continually face the challenge of adopting new technologies. And we absolutely can build boats more efficiently today than we could 2, 3, 5 years ago. And the technologies coming into the market today will allow us in the coming years to be more efficient and get cost out of our manufacturing stack going forward. So we're excited about that journey. We're certainly on it. And I'm sure Marcia and Jim are as well. That's going to help in our cost structures. But I think it's important to look at that quality trade-off when comparing costs for different yards, different parts of the world.
Jim, do you have thoughts on this?
Yes, I do. First of all, it's obviously a very complex and controversial topic, but I would say that it's very simple from our standpoint. It's about the volume and the size of the market is a key contributor to the cost structure. When we were building our product tanker series, we were at full production and taking full advantage of the capacity of our facility. We were delivering and building 2.5 ships a year. Our counterpart, in Korea, one of the South Asian Korean yards, has the facility and the capability and the market, to deliver and build 60 to 70 a year. So the Jones Act is a small market. The shipyards are all sized facility-wise, skill-wise to the size of the market. And the international market, is obviously much, much larger than the U.S. Jones Act market. So when you can be able to have that kind of ships and series and volume, and facilities and tech and more cranes, more technology, more Kiros. All right, all those things contribute to a more efficient operation.
Marcia, do you have any other thoughts?
Well, yeah, I do think, and I agree with Jim, having having a substantial backlog really helps get efficient. And for us, if we can build duplicates, we're usually, you can see from the vessels, you saw that we're sort of a one-off specialty yard, very capable. But what we love to see is contracts for multiple vessels of identicals, what we call identicals, where we can really get good at building. We can, understand how to build it, and then we're thinking how to cut the hours, be more efficient. So that's very important. I do think that, on our side, on the crew transfer vessels, I do think the European vessels, classed European vessels from DNV, BV are very high quality. And those are the designs that are coming over, and they are required to be classed. Some are being required to be classed. And along with, I think we have a very robust U.S. Coast Guard with the passenger vessels inspections. So I do think that has helped the quality of the U.S. vessels.
Do you think that U.S. regulations increase your costs? Health and safety, labor costs, those types of cost items, do they impact you, or do you think that's really the yards in other countries have, particularly in Europe, have similar requirements to satisfy?
Yes, I would say they have similar requirements.
I would too. I'd struggle to point to health and safety issues as a reason that if there's a perception of higher cost, I think that's good business. I think we want to run safe yards and we want to build safe boats.
No, absolutely. It's more, one might think that in foreign yards, those health and safety and environmental issues aren't necessarily paramount as they are for a U.S. yard, and hence might lead to a cost differential. That's the only reason I'm asking the question. But no takers. All right. So I think this is a good segue onto the U.S. build requirement itself. As I mentioned, there's a requirement that vessels be built in the United States, but that's actually not as simple as it sounds, because there have been instances where a U.S. yard is obtaining foreign-made parts, in particular prefabricated steel parts, and then completing their incorporation into the vessel in the United States. And occasionally, that's resulted in a determination by the Coast Guard that the vessel is actually not U.S. built, and hence is not eligible for the coastwise trade. And as some people may know, in participating in the forum, a vessel that does not satisfy the U.S. build requirements basically requires an act of Congress to become eligible to operate in the coastwise trade. How have your yards dealt with those types of situations? Do you encounter them often? How do you avoid those types of problems? Marcia?
Well, we use U.S. distributors, obviously, but for these crew transfer vessels, there is a lot of material and equipment coming from Europe, where the wind farm is developed in the beginning, and they developed vessels and industries to support those vessels. So we're finding that we are sourcing a lot of equipment, but obviously it is under the Jones Act, it is fine to bring in all sorts of equipment. It's just in the prefabricated parts that you run into difficulties.
Exactly. Jim or Patrick?
Yeah, I'll go next. Basically, we totally fulfill and go by the U.S. build requirements. But however, you can't have it both ways on the cost. In order to be competitive and to cost, there are components for very strategic reasons, commercial reasons, that we source on an international basis. And from very reputable, shipbuilders across the world who have a supplier network of equipment and parts that we're able to rely on and to be confident, okay, in their ability to deliver and that they're of the highest quality. So it is something that we always strive to maximize U.S. content, but as Marcia mentioned, there are certain things just by the design, okay, that's being dictated to that dictate a foreign piece of equipment or part.
Yep, absolutely. We focus on buying American as well. Where we have to, we will source outside the U.S., although in our procurement work, we're always very careful to make sure that we remain Jones Act compliant in everything that we do, even if that requires going back to the customer and explaining the situation and saying why something might be delayed in the current environment with procurement. It's a conversation that has to happen from time to time.
And do you take advantage of the opportunity that the Coast Guard gives to get U.S. bill determination letters? Do you typically do that as a routine, or you rely more on engineering and naval architectural advice?
Jim, you're probably closest to that. At Fraser, we do some of that when we have to, Tony, but it's an unusual step for us.
Yeah, we do see it for larger yards. I just wanted to see if that's across the board.
Right.
For people that may not know, the Coast Guard is available to review submissions to determine whether prefabricated steel parts and other things are going to be a problem. And many many shipyards avail themselves of that opportunity to go and talk to them and get these determination letters so that they know in advance before they deliver the ship that there's no problems. So.
Yeah, you basically answered the question for me, Tony. Exactly.
Sorry. Well, moving on to another topic related to the U.S. build requirement, and that is, and this has been discussed in an earlier panel at the forum today, and that is how important it is to the U.S. Navy and the U.S. Coast Guard to have U.S. commercial shipyards. I think all three of you have projects with the government. So Jim, maybe start with you.
Yeah, I think from our standpoint, there really are two dimensions to this. One is that we believe that the U.S. government, okay, does value the commercial shipyards that are in existence as a key part of the national security base. So I think that that's a message that we hear continuously, and that they need the capacity, both in terms of new builds and repairs. The other dimension is that what is kind of being talked about in the industry right now is applying maybe some of the best commercial shipbuilding practices to government projects. And that is being discussed at many levels. Our current MARAD training ship for towed services is basically right now the poster child of that, to where it's a quasi-government build, but utilizing best commercial practices.
Patrick or Marcia?
I'll try this one next, Marcia. You just look at the headlines this week and you realize the world is a pretty dangerous place. And for national security reasons, it's important that we keep a U.S. capability and skill set in building a strong naval fleet as required. And I think many people would argue even today we're well behind a lot of folks in the world, and need to be quite careful and thoughtful about how we maintain a key skill set. It's also an important cog in basic commerce. Here in Duluth Harbor, the ability to repair ships as and when required is critical to one of the top 20 ports in North America. So there's a clear need for the service, the skill set, the capability. We have some folks on the team here who are third, fourth generation shipbuilders, and we can't lose that skill set. That's an important capability within the U.S. workforce.
That's right. Now, I completely agree with both Jim and Patrick. It takes years to develop the skills, that our workers have to fabricate our vessels, obviously large and small. In terms of, we're a small yard, but still there's a lot of smaller vessels, particularly the U.S. Coast Guard. So we are mostly new build, but we have taken repair work for the motor lifeboats, the 45s and the 47s in our sector, mostly sector 1. And that is, we appreciate that revenue stream, and we've gotten, pretty good at it. So, so we're available, when those vessels do need to be serviced.
And Jim, you also, Philly Shipyard also does a fair amount of repair work for government ships.
Yes, we have done 3 repairs in the last few years. Currently, our docks are full, but we're looking at some potential capital expansion to allow us to do repairs on a more continuous basis.
So kind of related to the capacity issue you just raised, as everybody knows, the offshore wind space is booming, at least hopefully. A lot of leases are being granted, and it should lead to the construction of the wind turbines, which will of course need CTVs, SOVs, wind turbine installation vessels, etc. Can U.S. shipyards satisfy the demand for those new vessels? If somebody's crying to have an exception for foreign-made ships for the offshore wind space, is that a fair request? What's your thoughts on that? Patrick?
I think, yeah. Well,
Marcia, go ahead.
Want me to start?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, I think it depends on how fast the wind farms, the construction goes, because obviously there's leases all over the Atlantic coast at this point, and it depends on how they develop. And there's obviously more of the vessels are needed during construction than O&M, so there's going to be sort of upfront demand for all sorts of vessels, during the construction. And so I think it depends on how fast it goes. If it really goes fast, then there's going to be tremendous demand. But I do think there's a lot of shipyards that could get into this space.
Yep, I agree completely with Marcia's comments. We've seen this cycle before in the oil and gas industry in the 60s and 70s. As the oil and gas industry moved offshore, they required a whole new fleet of vessels to be built out. And there is capacity all over North America that can respond to that demand. But it doesn't come quickly. I completely agree with Marcia. It requires some time and pace to the conversations and to the build. But once those things are ready, and once customers know what they want built and are prepared to enter into those contracts, the space is there to get it done. We're ready to even expand space as needed to meet the offshore wind requirements here.
I have nothing much to add. I agree with my counterparts that it's all about timing. As we respond to inquiries about wind-related vessels, it seems like every 2 weeks the times change. So, and many of the people that we talk to, some of them are developers that don't understand things like dock availability and dock slots. So we're managing through that, but I'm not really aware to date, that there have been any vessels that are needed that some U.S. shipyard hasn't been able to respond to in order to do it. So I think it's an industry that's in its infancy, and you have operators, some that would love to bring foreign vessels in, all right, because they believe that might produce a better economic model. So I think we got this nip and tug, and there isn't ultimate final clarity on some of the issues, of whether they're going to be allowed to be Jones Act or variances are being given to foreign. And that affects timing and certainty, of building slots.
I think in general, many of the vessels that are needed for the offshore wind space a great number are probably smaller vessels, and hence the yards around the United States should be able to build them. It's the larger vessels where the larger yards like Philly Shipyard would be an issue if they're not available, but they aren't. It's not clear yet what size vessels are going to be, the larger size vessels, what are they going to build? I don't know if, okay. So the last kind of major topic I thought we discussed is environmental, social, and governance issues. And I think the focus is mostly on environmental. Just mindful of the time, I'll start with really what do the panelists see for the future in terms of fuels and ship designs? There's as everybody is aware, I'm sure there's a real push to go to different fuels sources, and that, of course, is where you all have a complex problem to deal with, and in dealing with the designers and the construction of the vessels. Jim, you want to start?
Yeah, as we see it, and talking to our various clients, a few years ago, it was building vessels that were LNG ready, but not ready, not installed. Now, the future, the people that are talking to us about are actually LNG installed, and with possibilities down the road that they can convert those to ammonia. So from our perspective, the owners that we're talking to are very keen, okay, to be greener and more fuel efficient and leave less of a carbon imprint. And so I see that trend continuing in a very big way.
Marcia or Patrick?
Yeah, well, the 4 contracts that we have for the CTVs, they will be hybrid ready. So that means that we have an empty compartment we'd like to use for other things, in the vessel, where the batteries will go. But I do think it's been for the new types of fuels, it's been a slower process for to come down to be used in the smaller vessels. I think there's a lot of, obviously on the larger vessels, a lot of progress, but less so on the smaller the vessel.
Yep, and agreeing with both of my colleagues here, adaptability going forward seems to be the watchword among our customers. And we engage on a regular basis with them about design that allows to adapt to new technologies as they basically come good, as something is proven to work. Being able to retrofit a new build to that particular engine or fuel source is really the watchword as we see it going forward.
Okay. And how involved are the yards in these developing emerging fuels? Do you meet with the designers up front? How does that interaction work, keeping in mind you're responsible for the ship?
We definitely meet with the designers right up front and talk about what their goals are, what their objectives are in the build. We're also doing quite a bit at the yard itself to become more green, if you will, and backing out our electrical usage from non-green sources. Here in Superior, we're 50% supplied by wind energy from Minnesota and the Dakotas, and that's terrific. But as we go forward, we're trying to get smarter in how we can generate some of that power ourselves right here on site and avoid paying third parties for it along the way. But it's in keeping with where our customers are going as well. It's just part of the same theme.
I think you mentioned that you have a building that uses solar energy.
We're looking at an upgrade to an existing building. We're looking at adding solar and thermal walls that will allow the radiant heat on the south-facing walls to actually pump heat into the building. We're excited about it. It's a way to heat a facility that today is heated through other means.
Marcia or Jim?
Yeah, well, we joined a group called the Green Marine, which is an environmental certification program. I think it's out of Canada. And it's just for the marine industry. And as for a small shipyard, that is sort of our way of being able to tackle the problems or the issues we have environmentally. So we establish benchmarks, and then there's an annual environmental performance reviews and evaluations. So that is one way where we've been able to approach that, and it covers many aspects of the environment.
And Tony, I'll quickly say that we also are doing a lot of things in the environmental area. All of the equipment, construction equipment, as well as the permanent equipment in the yard, we look for the most greenest solutions. An example is in our paint halls. All right, we just installed new boilers that are low NOx. All right, all these things cost a premium, but we believe, okay, we'll pay off over time, and we're doing the right thing.
I see Nicholas, and I think our time is up.
It's been a very interesting discussion, and I have to say, you all put a lot of information and insight into it, and thank you very much. And Tony, thank you for doing all the coordination. Very appreciated.
All right, thanks
you.
to all of our panelists.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.